do it yourself, or DIY for short. Hearing that term may conjure up two polar opposite emotions, either something that is incredibly exciting or completely daunting. Don't worry, I'm not here to tell you how to remodel your bathroom, but I am going to tell you why you should. DIY has a different meaning for everyone. It can be knitting or rebuilding engines, remodeling, painting, while for me, DIY meant building anything with wood. It all started when I was a completely mesmerized 7-year-old girl in long braids in the small garage of my childhood home. The garage didn't hold a car, but rather had walls lined with tools and pegboards with screwdrivers and hammers and clamps, bins of nails and screws, saws on homemade carts. We also had old refrigerator drawers filled with junk parts because you know you would need to use them again someday. It's a beautiful summer Saturday, and I'm with my dad, my hero, and we're building a car for my Pinewood Derby race at the Y. It's here where the love of building together cemented itself into my very core. About every weekend, you could find my dad and I playing games or doing puzzles, or my favorite, building in the garage. Most of our projects started with a trip to get lumber. So I would grab my super dolly, my Allen wrenches I thought were keys, and we would make our way to the store and stop for a donut, always with sprinkles. This was before the big box retailers were in our area, so all of the hardware stores were small and knew us by name. My dad would get a coffee, and I would be off to find the wood trolleys. But first, I had to stop where the vinyl ductwork was, and I would get my arms stuck. And I would do this every single time. And I'd panic a little, and I'd run to my dad, and he would untangle me. Riding on the wood trolleys was so incredibly fun, and I still love the smell of wood. I learned several things on those trips. One, how to pick a 2x4 by holding it up and turning the edges to make sure it wasn't too banged up or crooked. I learned about different grits of sandpaper and different types of nails and screws. My dad also taught me about how to find and care for quality tools and to always buy American whenever possible. Measure twice, cut once, and righty-tighty, lefty-loosey are two sayings that will never leave my mind. Those trips were filled with a sense of love and learning, maybe a few Band-Aids, and always extra trips to the hardware store. But life was never boring. There was always something to do, to figure out, and always something to do together. DIYing with my dad was a constant in my life for 35 years, and I was even able to include my sons a time or two. But then that world shattered when my dad unexpectedly died. I was completely heartbroken, but went on through life as you're supposed to do. But without that creative outlet, everything just seemed routine. Creating didn't seem like much fun anymore, and building didn't seem like much fun anymore, so I completely stopped. That curiosity of how things worked became dormant, and that love was buried under the grief and the vast emptiness that followed. Over a couple years, my mom must have sensed that loneliness, and she decided to give me my dad's tools. So I stood in that garage, and I was holding his old socket set with the dent on the side where I had dropped it during a project, and I found my Allen wrench keys and those refrigerator drawers full of junk parts, and I was transported back to when I was 7 years old, and I enjoyed building in the garage. I recalled the conversations that we had about dreams and goals, and I remembered the idea of how everyone should have a cool garage like ours. And if they didn't, they would need a space to come and create if they didn't have tools or the knowledge of their own. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to build. And since I couldn't do that with my dad, I decided to make that dream a reality and open a DIY workshop. Since then, I've thoroughly enjoyed helping others start or travel through their DIY journey. Most first-time DIYers have not done any type of project, so when they come into the shop, they're in awe of all the sawdust and the wood piles. And I sense that excitement and yet trepidation of, wondering if they can power tool. Most enjoy the satisfaction of painting and assembling a project with their own two hands and quickly realize that making something personal can never be replaced by the store-bought item. With that experience, they leave empowered to conquer the world. And what's even better is when they come back with pictures of their bigger projects and pick up that power tool like it's second nature. I encourage everyone to try, just as I had been growing up with you never know unless you try speech. Even a small project can lead to something bigger. That block of wood kicked off a lifetime of projects, including furniture building, gardening, home and car repair, and even a software company, which is really just building with computers. So start small and just progress little by little while discovering talents you didn't know you had and activities you never thought you would like. My dad could figure out anything. He hardly ever made mistakes either. So I, on the other hand, have made plenty. There have been small mistakes like hanging a picture crooked or misreading a tape measure and cutting wrong. But here's the best one. I decided to drill through water pipes while hanging shelves in my garage. Honestly, that one was not much fun. And you know that feeling you have when you can blame no one but yourself? Well, I've been there, and I survived, and I didn't like that flooring anyway. Once you get that first mistake out of the way, DIY becomes less frightening and more exhilarating, and you just get better and better. Your creativity and curiosity will be put into overdrive, and you'll be amazed at all of the ideas you come up with. And here's a secret: you can start even more DIY projects with all the money you save in labor costs. I didn't fully realize the impact those days in the garage had on my life and how fortunate enough I was to take that inspiring journey with my dad. Though not nearly long enough, I am grateful for the time and the knowledge he imparted to me. It made me realize that DIY is not do-it-yourself at all. It means family and community, growing, sharing, and learning. My kids and I now DIY with my dad's tools, and we still take rides on wood trolleys. My mom and I now share my shop, and it's brought together my in-laws, family, friends, neighbors, and strangers. Families come to create, and friends gather to make beautiful projects. DIY will build those connections and make lifetime memories. So think about something that you love or something that you've always wanted to try, and gather your family and see what you can DIY together. Remember, you don't have to make something big, bold, or perfect, but something meaningful to you. I know your first project will lead down a lifetime path of creativity and adventure in building, both for you and for someone that you love. And pretty soon, you will be remodeling that bathroom, so grab that power tool and get to it. Don't worry about hanging a picture crooked, but definitely check for pipes before you drill.